In this video, we will discuss how to evaluate a source and how to determine if a source is appropriate for your paper. A simple guide to evaluating sources is the CRAAP test. Taking the time to examine the currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose of a source will help you to choose appropriate sources for your paper. Currency. It is important to consider the date of publication for a source and how that will affect the topic of your paper. For example, if you're trying to make a point about how a play was originally received, you will want to find reviews or articles written around when the play was first performed. However, if you are discussing how that play has had a lasting impact on drama and literature, you may want a more recently published article. Depending on your topic, it may also be important for you to demonstrate how ideas have changed over time, in which case you may want to pick a few sources from differing time periods. Determine the time period that best fits your goal and use that as part of your criteria for selecting sources. Relevance. Is this source actually relevant to your topic? In order to determine relevance, you have to actually read the source. In fact, you'll probably need to read multiple sources and read them multiple times before you have a solid idea of how they relate to your topic. Take a look at the keywords in the title, headline, abstract, or tags of the article. If one or more of the main ideas of your topic are listed in the keywords, that's a good place to start. But you'll need to read the article to make sure that what you're looking for is actually addressed in the body of the work. It's also important to watch for loosely related topics, as these can be misleading. For example, if you're writing about religious symbolism in a poem, a book about religious symbols sounds helpful. But if it only discusses Catholic symbology and your poem engages Buddhist symbols, that book actually isn't going to be relevant at all. So take the time to read the sources you find and make sure they provide the information you need. Authority. Is the author an authority on the subject? Authority is constructed and contextual. It is constructed because we decide who we give authority to. In most cases, we grant authority to someone with a degree or significant experience in a field. It is contextual because a person may be an authority on 19th century literature, but not on films from the 1970s. When choosing a source, it's important to make sure the author has the authority to speak on the subject and knows what they're talking about. Accuracy. Is the information presented accurate? This can be tough to determine when you are just starting in the field yourself. Fact-checking is important. Some things like birth dates, publication dates, and historical events can be verified with a simple Google search. This is an important step. You do not want to write your whole paper based on inaccurate information. Confirming the accuracy of complex claims can be more difficult. If you can, you should try to find a second source that cites your original source or that makes the same claim. However, keep in mind that if something has only recently been published, these secondary sources may not exist yet. Not being able to reproduce an idea doesn't automatically make it inaccurate. But if you have a source with a claim that you cannot verify, ask for help from your professor or a librarian before you base your paper on that idea. Purpose. Consider why the source was created and what audience it was intended for. Entertainment pieces are written for the general public with the purpose of being sensational or comedic. They are typically biased, exaggerated, and have an over-the-top writing style. Academic journal articles, on the other hand, were written for an academic audience, with the intent of sharing a new idea or new research. They typically strive to present unbiased information and use subject-specific vocabulary. Deciding which type of source to use depends on the type of paper you're writing and your topic. A word of caution. Some sources have a hidden purpose. They may appear to be legitimate, informative articles, but were actually written with the purpose of selling a product or promoting a point of view. This doesn't mean these sources aren't useful, but it does mean that you need to be careful to identify the bias and the purpose of the source, and to read with a bit of skepticism. Some questions to ask include, is the author, publisher, or financial backer for this piece known to have a conflict of interest, a product to sell, a business to promote, a political stance to push? If so, has that impacted the content of the source? If the answer is yes, you may want to consider a different source. Or, if you choose to use the source anyway, you need to acknowledge these biases in your paper. This type of skeptical reading is important for any source you find. Even scholarly articles should be read skeptically. Ask yourself, what isn't the author telling you? What evidence or ideas weren't included in this article? What other things have you read that might be a counterpoint to this argument? Reading skeptically will not only help you to choose good sources, it will help you to put those sources into conversation with each other, and that is the foundation of a great paper. So remember, there are a huge variety of sources for you to explore, but it is important to choose ones that are accurate, whose purpose, currency, and content are relevant to your topic, and whose authors are authoritative within the context of your topic. If you need help answering any of these questions, ask your professor or your librarian.